Welcome back, everyone, from the Wall Street Silver community. We have our special friend with us, Junius Maltby. Junius Maltby runs a YouTube channel. Junius, how are you doing today, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome, awesome. We also have Jim Lewis and Lee Justo from the Wall Street Silver community. Before we get into questions with you, Junius, can you talk a little bit about your background, how you got started onto the YouTube channel, and everything with that?
Absolutely. I started the channel back in 2013. So obviously the kind of at the tail end of the major financial crisis that we had back then. Um, I've always kept it anonymous, my face, the image. And I know some people might wonder about that. That's kind of a question they'll have just due to the content on my channel, controversial content, also occupational things. So me and my wife, Mrs. Maltby, have always chose to keep it anonymous. When I was a kid, I was really into numismatics, coinage, precious metals. I've shared that story quite a bit on my channel, and it's remained a passion my whole life. I would carry on conversations about it. I would study it, read books on it, and I became politically active as a young man with the Ron Paul campaign, and I served as a delegate for him. That's when I kind of dove that much deeper, kind of into the wormhole of sound money and precious metals. I'd already been a student of it, autodidact, just kind of studying it a little bit, but that really took me deeper. And after the financial crisis, I obviously became that much more interested due to the motivation of what I'd experienced and seen. I had moved all my positions out of stocks, bonds, mutual funds. I closed everything out back then, moved all into precious metals and just kind of hid out, weathered the storm. And then 2013 is when I started the channel, and I was able to, because I wanted to have that conversation with other people. It's a big world. I had pretty much exhausted my family with the discussion of sound money and precious metals, friends. And so it was just do this, let's talk here. And I met a lot of good people, and it grew to what it is unintentionally. I never expected it to be like this. But last year, my wife, Mrs. Maltby, kind of really helped invigorate, re-energize the channel. She kind of blew it up with her talent, she helped me with a lot of production, and I was limited when it came to doing intros and all that. So she helps kind of blow the channel up and make it more entertaining, because I used to brag it was the most boring channel on YouTube. And ever since she got involved, it became less boring. So, and the image you see, that's the coin, the channel round.
So Junius, you just mentioned your wife. She's done some pretty cool artwork for past raids. Is she going to do something for May 1st, or?
Yeah.
She does she does do quite a bit of artwork. She does this a unique piece, unique design for every raid that we've done on the channel, other than kind of the initial ones that were on accident. The very first raid that we did was January 27th, and there was no artwork for that because it was spontaneous. That was kind of when the Silversqueeze was brand new, as you guys can remember. It was like the inception of it. And after that, when we started scheduling them, she would design some pretty cool artwork. And she does monthly art. That's what it is. We do a raid a month on our channel, and every month she kind of does a new design and contributes it to the artwork with a theme and unique appearance. It's kind of fun. Yeah, people really like it. A lot of the community inspired her and cried out to have it put on stuff. So they requested that she'd make a shirt or coffee mugs. And so that's where some of that stuff ended up, just because a lot of our channel members messaged her, said, I want that on a poster or a sticker or something like that. So she has done stuff for it. The timing for this, it won't be released in time for obviously this, but some of the designs she does have, and I'm going to see if they'll be ready for May 1st. I think they should be some of her final renderings. She's been working pretty hard. She works full time as well. So do I. So all of this is done always in our spare time, which is, it's become harder, but so she's working on stuff right now. I know that.
So before we started talking, we were briefly talking about the New York, Long Island accent and how it originates in Old Dutch when New York was New Amsterdam. And you mentioned there's a monetary component to that history. So
yeah,
I'd love for you to give it to us.
Well, I mean, it's a long story, but and I don't know it 100% every bit of it, but every time I have a conversation about history, you can always tie money into it. And because silver and gold, sound money weaves throughout history. I mean, as you guys all know, we're in an abnormal time period where we're not using sound money. Only 50 years really since Bretton Woods broke down in 71 and such. But if you go back, I mean, the origins of you were talking about Amsterdam, the Dutch there. And of course, you and I, everyone knows the word dollar. We use the word dollar frequently in America when we discuss money or wealth or finances. And going back to, if you have to go back a little bit further to about the 1500s, to Bavaria, to Germany, where you had the valleys, the valley silver being mined, and the large coin called a thaler or a Wachamstaler, valley silver. And Wachem is a valley. Tal is it was German, or I think it's High German. I know there's different dialects for valley. And the Wachamstaler, which became the thalers, were a large silver coin, pretty much the largest silver coin, I believe, that humans really transacted with since, or to the tetradrachm. Like it was a big silver coin. Most of you, if you've seen it, are familiar. It's about the size of a silver dollar today. And the weight and the purity of it began to circulate. The Dutch, they had word like, instead of taller, they would call it was like a taller, dalder. And those words, as the language moved more towards the Dutch side of things in Amsterdam, dalders and dollars, D-A-L-E-R and D-A-A-L-D-E-R. They carried some of them or used some of them. I think it was the lion head dollar or the lion dalder that showed up on the East Coast during the colonial time period, because the British, were not really keen on allowing gold and silver to leave the Isle of Britain and come to the colonies as much. They were kind of limited in what they could transact with. So there were a lot of them transacting with either Spanish silver, which was the pillar dollar. And that's where the pillar dollar got its name. I mean, it was, as you know, an 8 reals coin, 8 reals. The Spanish didn't really refer to it as much as a dollar. It was more of the Dutch and the colonialists in America, because it was a similar size, weight, and purity, close enough to the dollar that was coming over from Europe that they would transact with. So they ascribed it the term pillar dollar, or Spanish dollar, Spanish silver dollar. And then when the founders founded the country, and it was the circulating medium at the time. So it wasn't like when they did the Coinage Act and when they wrote the Constitution, said, no state should issue anything but silver and coin and gold. They just went with what the people had already chosen. I mean, that's a perfect example of the free market. The colonialists, the revolutionaries, those who founded the New World, they didn't need someone to say, hey, you're going to use silver. As a matter, we have a legal tender law and you're going to use this as money. It's like they already it was circulating. They had it, and then the country was born. Like it was already here. Silver was circulating as a dollar before America was even a country.
So since we're talking about this, Junius, why don't we touch on the Continental? Because, I mean, America kind of experimented with fiat currency back then, and they also experimented it with during the Civil War. And I don't know how many of our Wall Street Silver members know this history.
I have some of I've showed those on some of my videos in the past. I've got fake ones. They're like replicas for discussion pieces. I've got other real fiat currencies, but the real Continentals have been churned away in history. They're pretty hard to find. But yeah, it was paper fiat, and back, I know Thomas Jefferson had a very hard time with it. His family lost a significant amount of family wealth due to the Continentals and the banks at the time. That's where the term, as many people know, comes from, not worth a Continental, because they became worthless. They were printed into oblivion. They were trying to pay for the debts of the revolution, and it just didn't work. And that's why the founders, when they set things up in this country, especially the original Coinage Act, which they were all part of, and they chose sound money, silver and gold. And they also fought central banks, many of them, other than Hamilton, who was a big proponent of it during those early years. And it's funny how time passes on and people lose sight of that. And, as the educational system was broke down over the last century and a half, people have lost that vigor, lost that fight and zeal against central banks, against people that issue fiat. And it looks like it's making the comeback. So it's an exciting time to see that happening right now, like almost like an awakening, like people are realizing, hey, this was a scam.
Mm-hmm. I think more and more people every day are waking up, Junius, and seeing that with all the inflation going around worldwide, even in Middle East, all of their dinar and like all of their lira is just completely inflated and dying. So yeah, you're completely correct. People are waking up to the scam.
Oh, globally for sure. Germans are buying more gold. I think it's 2 grams per citizen I don't know what the measure of time is, but there were some articles recently out about the German population who have a entrenched genetic memory of hyperinflationary events and currencies going to nothing. Wow. And yeah, I think you're right. Turkey, the lira, like you just mentioned, over there, that it's absolutely happening there. Venezuela.
Lebanon, didn't Lebanon's currency also collapse in recent months?
Yeah, Lebanon had it was crazy. They had a significant collapse. I think it coincided some other disasters. They've had a rough go. And then Venezuela, the Bolivar. Mm-hmm. And then my wife's family, my mother-in-law is from Poland. And so she's got a pretty long history and knowledge base of just the former Soviet bloc and what took place there and it expands out of currency shortages to when, to seeing what happens as it relates to food and survival. So hearing her accounts of just that same type of environment, it's interesting.
So now, Junius, we talked about the Revolutionary War. We also had kind of a brief experiment with fiat back during the Civil War and the greenback. Why don't you give us a little history on that one?
Absolutely. There's a favorite article of mine. I tell my viewers this all the time, and I've probably beat it into the ground, but I'm going to say it again and give him a shout out. There's an author named Jacob Hornsberger who wrote an article titled Federal War on Gold. It's a very good piece, but it covers a lot of the history of even the Coinage Act, silver, just sound money. And a big part of that is the greenback discussion. And it's a centerpiece in that article. And then the Supreme Court cases that came out of it, those are really important for Americans to understand. As many people know, Lincoln was trying to pay for the war, right? And the Civil War was quite expensive, as war typically is. So he issued the greenback. Now, here's the parts I'll probably mess up on, was that I know that they traded at a discount on the open market. I think it was 80. It changed. You can look at charts of this back then because it fluctuated, but there was times where they were 80% or 60% of their face value when it came to people accepting them, because they knew they were being printed. People had kind of that connection to, I need to be able to exchange those bills for silver or gold at some point. They wanted sound money to back it, which they were not. And in order to enforce that, well, there was an issue that came out of that. And one of the Supreme Court cases is Hepburn versus Griswold. And I always mess up on who the plaintiff was or who was suing who. But the point of it was one of the parties had paid or given a loan to the other in gold for $10,000 US. It was $10,000 in gold. And the repayment occurred with greenbacks. And yet the party that was being paid back on the loan refused them and said, no, those, they traded a discount. They're only worth 80 or 60% on the market. I loaned you 10,000 in gold, pay me 10,000 in gold. And just a little bit background for the viewers as well. During this time in the Civil War, people were hoarding the sound money, the silver and the gold off the market. There was actually a building in, I think, New York, where you're at, Lee, that a floor collapsed because somebody was hoarding so much coin. An entire floor in a building collapsed in New York City during the Civil War because of the hoarding of change, silver and gold, because people understood. There was kind of like that gut instinct in the nation at the time that something's going to go off. They didn't know what direction things were going to go in. Hindsight for you and me is 2020. They didn't know. They just knew that things were bad. There was a war. So they were hoarding their sound money. And that's why fractional reserve currencies came out back then, which is something that my dad used to collect. Fractional reserves is like nickel, dime, quarter, and 50-cent notes. They're really cool, beautiful notes. Look them up sometime on the internet, fractional reserve notes from the Civil War era, and you'll see like a 30-cent or a 25-cent note, a paper bill that represents a quarter. Nice. So after that situation with Hepburn versus Griswold happened, it ended up to the Supreme Court. It went there. The first time it was reviewed, they actually ruled in the favor of the party that wanted to be paid in gold. And then some of the opinions, the judges, their writings are phenomenal when it comes to reading like what a Supreme Court judge's view of sound money is. That's why I would encourage people to read that case just to see what people used to say and think. One of them talked about just the consequences of enforcing what they would come up with being legal tender law. And of course, that ended up happening. The case ended up getting reviewed after Grant became president, and then there was a situation with another case called Knox versus Lee. So the two cases kind of go together, but it really allowed the federal government to intrude on private contracts, private dealings between parties, but really enforce legal tender law, saying you have to take this bill as payment. If you don't, the United States government will either kill you or put you in a cage. I mean, it's really what it is. The legal tender laws that you see on a note, in my opinion, are a violation of a person's natural right to choose money or competing currencies and deal in whichever medium they choose. And now that all comes out of the greenback. Lincoln really helped put that in place. That's why I'm not a big fan of Abraham Lincoln. It's not a very popular opinion, but I don't think he was the best president like some people do.
But, in contracts today, you can choose it's very common to choose the mode of repayment, whether it's euros, dollars. I mean, was the conflict because it wasn't specifically specified in those old cases? Because that doesn't seem like it would be an issue today. I mean,
they wanted to enforce the greenback as currency so that it wouldn't help a government to be able to issue notes if they couldn't force people to use them or accept them. Mm-hmm. If you had true competition in currency, okay, try it with gold and silver. Try to pay Ivan in gold coin that's not U.S. gold eagles and not have a deal where it's the face value. You're selling, like, I'm going to give you an ounce of gold for a truck and I give you a Krugerrand. That would be considered an illegal act, and even in America. I don't know the full depths of what was called the Trading with the Enemy Act and all that. A lot of this goes forward to when FDR removed gold and gold coin too. But choosing different fiats, which are all based on the dollar, reserve currencies, In the United States, I can't go to a grocery store and use whatever currency I want to. I can't pay them in silver, or gold. I think in a true free market, in an economy where everyone has the right, I should have the right to offer you seashells and you should have the right to refuse them. That's really what it should come down to. And then allow the market to kind of determine what unit of account, what medium of exchange, what liquidity anchor, extinguisher of debt we want to choose and use. And the people running around trying to hawk seashells will probably lose pretty quickly. The next thing to go would probably be fiat. Let's face it, if I had the opportunity with my employer to be paid in a fixed amount of weight of metal, I would probably go that route, because over the last 20 or 30 years of my career, I'd be doing pretty good if he signed a contract back in like 2008 to pay me X amount of ounces of silver per day for work. And then I'm fast forward to today, I would have kept up with inflation pretty well. Now, the legal tender laws just allow governments to force people. That's truly what it is the ability to force people to transact with mediums they may not otherwise transact with. We don't have the freedom to choose our currency or there's no competition in monetary units in the United States. Otherwise, silver and gold they'd lift the capital gains taxes on them and allow people to transact with them. And that's one of the reasons Ron Paul snuck in minting coinage in 1986 in the US, why the silver eagles that you see have a dollar amount written on them, because they are legal tender for that very reason. It doesn't just say 1 ounce of fine bullion. It says right on the reverse of a US silver eagle that it represents dollars. So I could pay you in those, but it would have to be the dollar amount, not the ounce amount, for the IRS reasons.
Junius, it's interesting that you pointed out that the original Continental and the currency of the day during the Civil War, they both went sort of to zero, correct?
Absolutely.
At the time, and it's the common theme seems to be, governments having to spend crazy amounts of money that they don't have on wars that they can't afford. And a lot of people don't realize the primary reason why Nixon had to take us off the gold standard in 1971 was probably also because of the Vietnam War and the crazy expenses that the United States was incurring in trying to successive wars in Korea, Vietnam, growing the American empire of military bases all across the world. That's basically what forced us off the gold standard. Or would you agree with that?
I would agree 100% with that. And it's hard to figure out how much of it. I guarantee you, a lot of it is the war. Then there's all the other social things. When you had the Great Society, the war on poverty. We also had the war on drugs. All these expensive things that you're talking about, especially Vietnam. And that there's another paper by a professor named Professor Ferdinand Lips, and it's called Gold Wars. It's actually a speech that he gave. I would really encourage, again, audience members later on to read that. It's a good piece. And it's exactly what you're talking about, how unbacked fiat, fractional reserve, unbacked fiat banking systems and currencies really help perpetuate and allow not only endless warfare, but massive, massive spending at levels that would be unsustainable and impossible if we were confined to using sound money. That's why I've often helped more progressive friends or people that are more left-leaning that pretend, I say pretend because they kind of pretend to care about others. They kind of pretend to care about the lower classes or those in need. And I try to help them understand how much sound money affects all of those things that as a progressive, they say they care about. Let's just take war, like you mentioned, for example. You really want to nip the military industrial complex at the heel. You really want to bring them back in. You really want to close all those 130 or whatever bases around the world and end perpetual warfare, 20-year wars in Iraq or in Afghanistan that, you know, didn't really accomplish anything that should have never occurred. You really want to make that more thought out to where Congress really has to stop and pause before they do that.
If you want to go to war, all right, we got to raise taxes and
make it. Yeah, you have to make it hurt. You got to make it painful for the Treasury. The other thing is the progressive situation, their view of, and I talked about this the other night in a video I did, because let's look at inflation. Let's talk about just how does inflation affect fixed income earners, people on pensions, people on Social Security, the elderly. They're adjusting, the United States CPI is adjusting the Social Security. On average this year, the adjustment is going to be equal $20 per Social Security recipient, $20 a month. And it equaled, I think, 0.23 or 1.3%. I would have to look it up. It was in the news just today. I don't remember the exact percentage increase, but it's minute. It's nothing. It's minuscule compared to what most of you would agree real inflation is. Even the Fed said that they would accept 4%. They're claiming it's between 2 and 3, depends who you talk to. You know, you get 4 economists in a room, you get 15 opinions. But you've got real guys like the shadow stats people that put out the numbers using the pre-1980 stats and metrics. And inflation's probably cooking around 9 or 10%. I mean, look at the information coming out on housing, on building construction materials, food costs. I did several videos this week discussing inflation because there's a lot of people, and it's amazing to me. I know sound money, quote, sound money enthusiasts or other stacking people that they kind of spent a long time denying that inflation was coming and saying that it didn't even exist. It wasn't happening. They weren't seeing the signs of it when it's really all around us. You look at the treasury auctions that were taking place, the rates going through the roof. I mean, nobody wants the dollar. Russia was unloading dollars. China's been unloading dollars. I mean, I think you guys, I'm probably preaching to the choir with that, but inflation affects people on fixed incomes. As their dollar purchase is less, they're going to, have to go to the grocery store, make really tough decisions. You've got people on Social Security, you got people on pensions that are getting a fixed amount essentially every month. And the currency that they're being given is not buying them as much food or not paying for as much energy, not buying as much gas, and they're going to suffer for it. Yep. And that's something I don't think the progressives get is their policies of modern monetary theory, constantly expanding the money supply, living off of debt, printing dollars to pay for, everything under the sun has a real cost and a real consequence, and it hurts people on the lower brackets of society. It's not going to hurt the upper 1%, because guess what? The upper 1% all have positions in gold. Like Jim Rickards said, he's never known a billionaire that did not own precious metals, ever. And they all have them. They're all sitting on it. So they're going to be insulated because, again, a lot of them are also aware of this stuff. They look at economic trends. The wealthy started privately vaulting precious metals back in the fall of 2019 before the repo market went to hell. So they saw the writing. They study. They got people that work for them. Some are going to miss it, but a lot of them are taking positions in sound money because they know the U.S. dollar is probably on the downward trend. But the impoverished aren't going to see that, and they're not going to have the ability to, and that's unfortunate. That the people that pretend to protect them are going to be the ones that hurt their lives probably the most.
Well, at least we have the Billboard campaign coming up and spreading the word a little bit.
That'll be interesting.
Yeah. Hopefully, I hope that happens.
Oh yeah.
It's happening. They go live on May 3rd in 5 different. We had enough money to do 70 billboards in 5 different states. So that's the initial launch. There's some money left over after that we're going to reserve more for social media campaigns.
That's excellent. How many billboards did you say? 70?
Over 70 in
70.
5 different states.
5 different states, like high density population areas.
Yeah.
There's
so
Las Vegas, Ohio, and then we're putting out, I think, a newsletter at the end of the month with the PDF file for all locations, latitude and longitude, and you also will put it on Wall Street Silver as well.
Excellent. Yeah, and that's great. The more people, and I've seen that. I think what you're talking about, more and more people are awakening to this. I think catching on. It's what's great about it is silver doesn't really need a salesman. Silver doesn't really need, it doesn't even need us to because it's kind of a natural instinct. It's a natural occurrence. When fiat currencies die, which they always do, like Voltaire said, all fiat returns to its intrinsic value, which is zero. Eventually it's going to happen. It's inevitable. And there's nothing they can do about it. I mean, the dollar kind of sits outside the norm. It's on its deathbed. We're 50 years in August 1971, Bretton Woods broke down. And we're coming up on August of 2021. So 50 years this summer is the dollar's grand birthday of being unbacked by anything. And the average lifespan of a fiat's about 30 years.
I think we already know there's going to be a raid day probably in August, right?
Oh yeah. I actually have it in my phone right now. I'm not even kidding you. I have the anniversary for that because I was like, I'm not going to miss this 50th anniversary.
Yeah, maybe that'll be the month. Is August an active month for COMEX? Maybe that'll be the month we actually finish off COMEX. I don't think we're going to finish them off in May. Might take a little longer than that, but I actually think it's July and September is the active months. I got to check that.
Yeah. And it's going to be an incredible, I think by that time, even more people will have awakened to this, we're looking at, silver's been money, as you guys know, 6,500 years, essentially. Humans have a natural relationship with sound money. It's the go-to. People return to it every single time. And as inflation gets more and more discussed, it's in headlines every day now. I mean, it's the frequency in which, and I just covered that this morning, the frequency in which inflation is being discussed in the United States is increasing every single day right now by all metrics, even like Google searches. Yep. It's massively understood by the people. And I think that's going to create a huge impulse of energy towards, getting out of dollars and into things like silver and gold.
I mean, the 1970s wasn't that long ago. I certainly remember inflation being a big problem when I was a child. Mm-hmm. And, you walk into any Home Depot or a grocery store, you see the inflation right in front of you.
Yeah. You hear stories from it, from people like yourself that were back then. Exactly. I know my parents have talked about it, how they had to jack up interest rates.
Back then in the late 70s and 1980, we had a Paul Volcker. He was able to raise interest rates to kill inflation because our total debt in this country was only in the range of 30-35%. He had the spare capacity to raise interest rates. This time around, with debt being so insane, I think we're approaching 150% debt to GDP. I mean, the 30 trillion debt to 20-something trillion, low 20s. I don't even know if they can raise interest rates again.
I don't think they can. I think that's impossible, actually, because it took the United States from its birth to about 1981 or 80, right about the time you're talking about. It took the United States that entire length of time to accrue its first 1 trillion in debt. And from then, 1981 to now, we've accrued the additional 27 trillion. So if it took 100 and whatever, 80 years or something, I mean, it took a long time to get that first trillion, and we were able to stack up 27 trillion since then till now, from 81 to now. We're a debtor nation. It's 100, like you said, about 130 to 150% debt to GDP. They can't raise them. They're stuck. They can't even meet the interest payments on a 0.01% rate.
Yeah.
We just interviewed a Cornell professor, Dave Collum. I don't know if you follow him on Twitter at all. And I was asking him, is there any way out of this? He's like, nah, we just got to walk through the valley of death. We're going to have to go through a currency reset and just reboot and start over. The Fed's sort of in a debt trap. They'll talk a good game that they can raise interest rates, or that Jay Powell will tell Congress in his testimony, yeah, we have tools that we can use to control inflation. but really the only tools they got are they've got two tricks in their playbook. They can either print money or raise and lower interest rates. That's it.
Exactly. I've repeated that oftentimes to my viewers. What are these mythical tools that the Fed has? It's like they have a name your price gun from Progressive that they can just point at things and either create value or make wealth disappear or come. What are these mythical? You always hear them talking about it. Well, we have tools we can, and that's what you said. Printing money.
You guys did not mention that they can do is they can buy assets,
which they've been doing.
Yeah,
that's why the Dow's up.
Yep, the plunge protection team at work, right?
$27 billion a day they're pumping into the financial system to keep it afloat.
Whoa. Yeah, and if the minute they pull the plug on that, it's over. It's over. And I keep racking every guest we have on. I ask, what's the way out of this? What's the way out of this? Is there any strategy that has a soft landing here? And no one can come up with one. It's like, yeah, we can inflate our way out of the debt. That has its own cost. I mean, that's hyperinflation. I mean, that's either pull the plug and let the economy go through a full reset, or you hyperinflate it, and well, then you're gonna have to go through a reset anyways. I mean,
no nation's ever survived. I believe it was a debt to GDP of 90%. Like you said, we're about 130, 150. I don't think there's a pretty way out of this at all. I think from the people I trust and read, it's pretty grim. One of the professors I read years ago, and I haven't checked up on him, but I don't. Hopefully he's still alive. Professor Antal Faquet. He said that $10,000 gold sounds great, just like $1,000 silver would sound great to us. But you have to realize that's going to most likely be a pretty ugly world for a lot of people. It might be pretty ugly for a while. I'm sure it'll stabilize at some point, but it's going to be painful. Can you imagine? I mean, imagine the people that are on the amount of entitlements that they're on today suddenly cut off because they're just not coming anymore.
Well, a lot of people, when we start talking about crazy, extreme numbers like $100 silver or 500 or 1,000, yeah, but it's in relation to what? If the dollar is crashing that much, your buying powers, it's not like you have $1,000 today. It'll be,
exactly.
What are we even if the dollar's collapsing and on the verge of currency reset, $1,000 an ounce doesn't mean anything. It could be the same as $10,000 an ounce for silver. It's meaningless at that point. But it is worth having because those hard assets will be worth something in the new currency. Whereas people who have all their wealth in paper, in dollars, in a savings account, or in bonds, those are going to be inflated away. They're worthless. That's how I think of it. Is hard metal will be worth something no matter what the future currency is going to be.
Yeah, so goes the dollar, so goes the entire market. You imagine when the dollar starts going in that direction, it's all gone. I mean, it'll be devastating for the markets. But back to that, measuring your metal in, fill in the blank. Yeah, I tell people, metal's a store of labor, a store of value. I measure it in its weight. It doesn't move at all. An ounce of gold, an ounce of silver. They buy goods and services when but I don't. Again, they don't. I don't reflect their value, I guess you should say, in fractional reserve fiat notes. I have to in order for people to understand the discussion, the price points. But like you said, the best part about it is there will come a day, I tell people, no amount of fiat, no amount of Federal Reserve notes, because they're not dollars. We already know what a dollar is. It's a specific weight and purity of silver. No amount of Federal Reserve notes in a wheelbarrow will buy you an ounce of silver one day. That's the course you're on. It's not today, but it is in the future. I truly can tell you with all sincerity that I passionately believe there will come a day where no amount of what most people call a US dollar will buy any amount of silver at all, because the people who hold the silver will have no need and not want the Federal Reserve notes that you're hawking, and they're not going to give you their silver for it, especially knowing the direction that those notes are still on.
Well, Junius, what about other assets? Our community is very fond of silver and also gold. Real estate, if people are really thinking about this, what are other ways to protect yourself? Because you can't. It's pretty difficult to be all in gold and silver. So.
Well, it's not. I mean, it's hard for some people, maybe psychologically. I have a pretty strong ideology towards sound money, but I exactly understand what you're putting at. I hold one residence, but I would like to have further property in the future. hopefully gold and silver one day make that leap easier for me. I've got a friend that has a significant farm. I've got several friends that are in agricultural places, and that's what they do. They'll hold sound money, but they'll also buy an additional 800 acres to put wheat on. And something that produces like that, that they can plant wheat, use their labor on, and then fertilize it, grow crops, sell them. It's always earning an income at that point. Plus it's land. They're not making any more of it. So, the land values typically rise. It's a pretty good investment. I think agricultural land, farmland, something you can produce on is good, maybe rentals. But personally, this is just me again. I'm not an advisor here at all. I don't like holding real estate in certain regions. I mean, if you had bought real estate in Flint, Michigan back in the 70s or 80s, I mean, there comes a point where I don't want to own you couldn't give me a single piece of property in Flint, Michigan or Detroit today. You couldn't give me anything in Chicago today. I wouldn't want it. I don't care if it's a rental. I don't care if it's an Airbnb. I don't want it. It has no value to me.
Oh yeah. You mean because of the government pension?
Everything.
All the obligations.
It's a long. It's the entire social economic demographic of the regions. It's the failed state that they live in. Yeah, the fact that they're very progressive, leftist leaning areas that have a track record of a lot of things that I disagree with when it comes to their political outlook, their taxation, firearms laws, things like that. So I have no interest in those properties. And then around me, I mean, yeah, property, real estate, it would completely depend on where it is. I don't think it's a blanket fix all. Whereas an ounce of gold's an ounce of gold. I don't have to pay any maintenance on it. I don't have to rent it. It might not pay me a dividend, but like if you have 10,000 ounces of silver, you don't have to put a new roof on it. You don't have to fix the plumbing. You don't have a tenant that's going to cook meth in it and defecate everywhere. So there's no liability with silver. It doesn't owe anything. I don't have to do any maintenance or upkeep. I can store it in the crawl space of my house. The house that it's in could burn to the ground and I still have 10,000 ounces of silver. It's, so there's a big difference there in what you're going for when you buy an asset like silver or gold. I'm not in it to get a dividend or a rent check. I'm in it to maintain wealth preservation over time and a longevity of storing my labor without having to worry about it and think about what it might need or its transferability, its portability. I can't transport an acre with a house on it very well, whereas I can carry a pretty small clutch of sound money and carry much more wealth, much more densely. That makes sense at all?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, hey, Junius, let me ask you this tough question. Are you into Bitcoin or Dogecoin? You sound like a Dogecoin guy to me.
Not at all. Neither. What's interesting about that is I actually have those conversations quite a bit with some other friends. But did you know Dogecoin is coded to be permanently inflationary?
No way.
Yeah. Permanently. Absolutely. Check this out. I just learned this from a friend of mine the other day. 10,000? I think it's 10,000 per minute are minted.
Wow.
And it's permanent. It's coded right into it. It's literally and that's why it's funny. It was invented as a joke. It's amusing.
Yeah, it was designed to be the worst thing possible.
Yeah, and it's a joke. These people are buying something that's it's known in the code to be permanently inflationary. And I think someone will correct me in the comments, I'm sure, because I'm not big into Doge at all, but 10,000 or something per minute. It's an incredible metric. It's unbelievable that people are, and they're throwing. But here's the great part, guys. It's a testament to the worthlessness of the US dollar, the Federal Reserve note. Yeah, the Federal Reserve note is so worthless. It is such a piece of trash, this coupon, that people are willing to give it up for digital jokes, a meme coin called Doji that really, does it have any value? Apparently it does. Apparently one day, I can't wait for the day where Doji is on parity with the US dollar. That's going to blow people's mind.
What is it? What's it at now? Like 26, I think 26 cents.
I had a buddy buy it as a joke, literally to troll. He was trolling me because we did some little crypto stuff on but he trolled me and he bought it like with $6 years ago. And he keeps throwing it at my face and laughing about it. I just tell him to keep wait. Wait, buddy. It'll go to zero.
It's at 30 cents right now. It reached 44. Yeah. Back about 2 weeks ago. Yeah. But it's at 30 cents right now. And I remember talking about this with one of my friends when it was 6 cents a couple of weeks ago, a month or two ago.
I remember when it was a tenth of a cent or no, yeah, it was a tenth. It was 0.001.
Wow.
And then Elon just made it funny, made it famous with all his tweets.
Yeah, someone will be left laughing at some point. The others are going to be left hurting in tears. Just a matter of time.
Well, what do you think about any of the other coins, or Bitcoin, or Ethereum, or XRP, or do you think about any of those things?
Yeah, in the past, I've spent considerable time just in that side of things, and it's a pretty lengthy. Once you introduce the crypto conversation, it's pretty lengthy because I don't hold any Bitcoin. I was aware of it from its inception, from the beginning, and I think it's a really fun ideological discussion for me as a precious metals enthusiast, even back then, because I was a huge proponent and I applauded the fact that they were going after that monopoly we talked about earlier, the monopoly of currency issuance to central banks. Because on my channel, the biggest enemy to me has always been the Fed, the Federal Reserve System, and the Fed, and the Fed. I'm a big proponent of end the Fed. And I don't like the banks, the modern banking system. We have a little joke on our channel. It's a phrase that my wife's actually put on a mug, and it's part of the upcoming theme is make bankers jump again. It might sound cruel, but it's a thing that was born on our channel, make bankers jump again. And I don't like those people. So anything that challenged them, anything that threatened their world, I was a fan of. And Bitcoin did that. It was kind of like this, especially when they started saying, oh, it's only terrorists use it. And they were throwing all these accusations towards it, when I knew it wasn't true. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If the institutions, if the Fed, if the bankers hate this thing this much right now, it's got to be doing something. It has to be some kind of a force to be reckoned with. Mm-hmm. So I did explore it a little bit, and I don't like to dive too deep into the fiat stuff, just because I think it takes away from the sound money conversation today, and they are different. I think crypto is very, very speculative. It's very risky for some people. Some people can't handle it. They can't stomach the swings. But I think it does have a role. I do believe that blockchain, the technology, it is impressive. It does have a role. I love seeing the tokenization of sound money, of precious metals. There's a part of that I have discussed. I've done some interviews with the gentleman at Aris. They're a company that's actually working to link up vault partners, banks, bullion banks. They're working with the London Bullion Market Association, LBMA, Brinks, and such, and then mines. And they're actually creating one-to-one, which I thought, that's back when crypto was first born. I thought, well, okay, I get it, tracking it. I get the eliminating of double spend, that the need to approve transactions and confirm it and keep it secure. So I saw the application, the use that it would provide. And then even way back then, I thought, wow, could you imagine if they could tie this in with sound money and have gold and silver and platinum linked and kind of on the blockchain, but you could redeem those coins for sound money for a particular weight at some point. And lo and behold, when I found out about these guys doing that, this company Oris, I thought it was a brilliant idea, because that's exactly what they were doing. Is each unit represents 1 gram of that metal. So they have one called AWS, Oris Silver, and it represents 1 gram of silver, no matter what. And you can redeem it once you get to the kilo level. So if you have 1,000 AWS, you can request delivery and get a kilo bar of silver, which I thought, that's it. I mean, this, to me, now I have the ability. Hey, Ivan, I really like your poster behind you.
Nice.
your 2-pack post. So I want you to send that to me for I'll send you 3 grams of silver. This is just an example of a transaction. It would be, at that point, I'm using you as silver. I'm sending you AWS 3 grams or whatever. And then if people started transacting it for micropayments or whatever, because you can, I think it breaks it down decimally. Boom, lo and behold, you're using the blockchain to confirm transactions. We're eliminating double spend. We can engage in, quick, efficient international payments, because let's face it, silver and gold, that's one of the criticisms, is people don't want to carry it. Mm-hmm. It's slow. Obviously, if I'm trying to do a big trade with a company in China and I'm buying a lot of products, a barge full of tea, I don't want to have to mail them silver bars on a ship. As you know, that's the Spanish and the British were taking ships full of silver to China back in the 17th, 18th centuries, holes full of Spanish silver, and they would trade for tea and spices and porcelain. Well, okay,
That's a little slow. I know, you don't want to wait 3 months to send your payment and 6 months for it to come back or whatever on the trade wins. But what if we could send them silver on a blockchain, because there's vaults distributed internationally. And now you can send them these tokenized units that exist in the ether, and then they appear over there within seconds. They can withdraw it out of a vault if they choose to. And then your shipment, it's the same thing as sending each other digital dollars or something, but it's backed. I don't know if you guys have, what your thoughts are on that, but that's kind of that's the direction I would approve of when it came to crypto.
No, this has been a really good conversation. We've been going about 45, 50 minutes now. But Junius, this has been, the history that you bring to the conversation has just been amazing. It's been different than any other guests we've had on. And I definitely want to have you back in the next 2 or 3 months. Let's get back together and keep talking as the year progresses. We'll talk about more raids. We'll talk about August as we get closer to the 50th anniversary of leaving the gold standard. I'm sure 2021 is shaping up to be a pretty momentous year, and we definitely want to talk to you again.
Well, I appreciate the compliment. I really do. Thank you for that. And I appreciate you guys even having me on and acknowledging that our channel exists. A lot of us, some of the people in my community, they've been stacking for a long time, and they're happy to be a part of this. It's just a lot of newcomers, new blood. It's nice to see the different demographics mix. I've got people on my channel that are in their 70s and 80s that have been stacking silver for 50 years. And now you have people that are brand new coming in. It's excellent. And the raids being, something that we did on our channel that we really valued. And it's nice to see the raids being recognized and celebrated and seeing it catch on. It was so spontaneous and it was so organic and natural, but to see you, like all of us kind of spread out around the world, kind of simultaneously say, hey, let's attack silver. And then it's crazy. I mean, really, it was multinational. Really, it truly is an international movement going after these guys. So,
no doubt. Junius, before you go, I'm curious about your coin. Is that something that people can buy? The one that you're showing right now?
It's no longer minted.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, but we minted about right under 1,000. It was 900. I think 960 were struck. They were struck to order back then. It was. And it's got some symbolism to it. The face on it is from a statue, an ancient Roman statue called Marsyas. He was a Greek satyr that challenged the god Apollo to like a musical contest. And for that audacity for challenging a god, he was basically tied to a tree and skinned alive. Apollo filleted him, skinned him alive. And the look you see on his face is tortured. He's being tortured. His hands are strung up above him. And he ended up becoming like a symbol to the ancient Romans of free speech or challenging authority, speaking truth to power, challenging those in power. And people would, in Rome at the forum, would actually post little notes on him or bring complaints and criticisms before Marsyas. And so that representation of freedom of speech, but also speaking truth to power and challenging the authorities and suffering for it, is truly the face of what my channel is, what it represents. And so that's kind of why he's on that side in the obverse and the face, essentially the face of the channel. And we had it struck. It was several years ago, but yeah, they are coveted now. A lot of the channel members, especially new ones, are always like, where can I get it? I'm like, I'm sorry, they don't strike it anymore. I have the dies in my house.
We should make another one.
Have you thought about making more coins or redoing
another one?
My wife's actually in the process and it's almost done. I think the final rendering was supposed to be today she's having a bar made, a channel, and she's going to be working on doing some bars. I will be doing a coin in the future again with Marsyas on one side, just like you see here. And the reverse will be different than the last one. The coin you see there on the reverse would be the Imaji symbol, which is Sumerian cuneiform. And it's the first time humans ever wrote the word liberty.
Nice.
Wow. That's cool.
The next bar that I think our members want Wall Street Silver to do, they want to see a gorilla on top of the Fed building burning.
Beating it like King Kong.
Yeah, King Kong with a rocket in his hand on top of a Federal Reserve building with it on fire.
Yeah. But yeah, keep an eye out. My wife's she's got a chronic illness, but she works hard, and her little bar that I just mentioned, you'll see it. It'll be shortly. I think within a day or two, you'll be able to see what her bar design that she's working on getting out there will look like. And it should be cool. I've only seen a sneak peek myself too. And her work's always fun. It's always challenging and impressive. It's usually controversial.
Nice. Well, we want to thank everyone from the Wall Street Silver community. Again, Junius Maltby, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We hope to see everyone soon. Take care, everyone.